We'll go now to Sydney, where Greens leader Christine Milne is speaking.
Young Australian doing so well in international sports event. On the serious big issues facing the nation today, though, Australians will be really concerned that there are reports that the Australian government has been negotiating with the Sri Lankan government for sending back the persecuted to the persecutor. Nothing could be more offensive to Australians to think of our government sending the persecuted back to the persecutors in Sri Lanka. Australia is appeasing the Rajapaksa regime. They have a shocking reputation for human rights abuses. Excuse me. Recently in Geneva, the UN Human Rights Council voted for an investigation into human rights abuses in Sri Lanka at the end of the civil war. Australia did not sponsor that resolution. That sent shockwaves around the human rights community because Australia has traditionally supported UN moves to investigate human rights abuses. You cannot see the decision that was taken in the UN Human Rights Council as separate from what is going on with this government's attempts to send back those who have been abused to the people who were doing the abusing. Overnight, there have been mixed reports. One report saying that the Sri Lankan military had confirmed that a boat had left Sri Lanka with a view to picking up the 153 asylum seekers, including 37 children, at sea somewhere, even in the midst of the monsoonal conditions in the Indian Ocean. That was denied a short while ago. It is now up to Prime Minister Abbott. Prime Minister, tell Australians, are you going to send 153 people back to the people who have persecuted them? Is that what this nation has become under your leadership? Because I think the overwhelming majority of Australians will be horrified by this. Not only is it shocking and cruel for the people who have been persecuted and are being treated like this, but it is absolutely in breach of our obligations under the Refugee Convention. This has to stop. And Minister Morrison and the Prime Minister cannot keep hiding behind their Operation Sovereign Borders and incidents at sea and so on. Australians deserve to know exactly how low our government is prepared to go for their domestic political mantra, and just how cruel they're prepared to be to people, and just how far they are prepared to trash Australia's reputation in international circles. On another matter, today, Minister Hunt has announced the appointment of a Threatened Species Commissioner. Well, the Threatened Species Commissioner is a public servant who has had a name change in the role in the public service. Without new statutory powers and independence, without sufficient funding, all we are seeing is a public servant who will be overseeing the further deterioration in our natural environment and in our threatened species. We've got a government prepared to hand back the powers to the states. We've seen a government prepared to see the destruction of the tarkine, the habitat for the Tasmanian devil. We've got a government who is not supporting a new national park in Victoria which would protect the leadbeater possum. We are seeing a government prepared to engage and oversee and support massive land clearance across Queensland, more native forest logging. Key to protecting threatened species is to protect the habitat that they live in. We're already seeing koalas going to extinction as a result of habitat loss and as a result of global warming. If you're not going to address global warming, if you're going to actually put your foot on the throttle and make more and more of natural environment and habitat disappear, you are on a proactive strategy of destroying threatened species, and that is precisely where the Abbott government is. Don't try and fool Australians, Mr Hunt, that you now care about threatened species when you're prepared to destroy the home of the Tasmanian devil, destroy the home of the leadbeater possum, watch koalas go to localised extinction. Where is there a comprehensive strategy to deal with this? And the Greens have instigated a Senate inquiry to look at just how much of an assault the Abbott government is already mounting on our environment. And to add to that, we have a Prime Minister who is out day in, day out with his climate denialism and his attack on renewable energy. He's now trying to argue the case for the big polluters, that the government should pay them rather than them pay for the pollution that is driving global warming. He's trying to attack renewable energy because everybody knows that renewable energy is bringing down the wholesale price of power, and that's undermining the business case for the old fossil fuel coal-fired generators. When you think Prime Minister Abbott, you think coal-fired generation. When you think Prime Minister Abbott, you think the past, you think rust bucket economy, you think we're getting left behind by the rest of the world. Thank you. Questions?
The reports from Christmas Island, what do we know of those reports about the asylum seekers?
The reports from Christmas Island are simply saying that they believe that there were Sri Lankan asylum seekers off Cocos Island. They believe that there has been an attempt to intercept, but we don't have any more detail. This is where the government must come out and say what is going on. You know, you can't have a big triumphal press conference talking about stopping the boats and then the very next week refuse to confirm, A, that there have been 153 people seeking asylum from Sri Lanka, having left in a boat from India, I think on the 13th of June or thereabouts, and then refuse to say what you're doing about it. It's essential that Australians know, because the very idea that we would send people back to the people who persecuted them is offensive to every Australian. And what are we teaching our children? That it's okay to send people back to human rights abusers? And with the Sri Lankan regime, we have a High Commissioner here in Australia who the Greens argued we should not have recognised his credentials because he is on the list of those accused of war crimes at the end of the war. And now the Deputy High Commissioner, who's only arrived here in the last few weeks, he was the media head of the unit for the national security forces at the end of the war. Australia is engaged in appeasement of the persecutors, and that is unacceptable to decent people.
It's been 4 days, obviously, since they had civilian contact, and we still don't really know where they are, if they're safe, and where they're going. I mean, Scott Morrison probably has a fair bit to answer for in terms of his communication in that regard as well.
Well, both the Prime Minister and the Minister have got a lot to answer for. They can rush out and have their big press conference when they want to boast about their stopping the boats, but they run for cover and hide when the lives of 153 people are in question. Where are the people? And the Prime Minister must say whether he's prepared to send them back to the persecutors. And the reality is, how will we ever know the truth? We've got an Australian government not prepared to be truthful with the Australian people, and we've got a Sri Lankan government engaged in human rights abuses who will most certainly not be telling the truth about what happens to those people. That is an unacceptable situation. In the 21st century, it is unacceptable that people can just disappear. We have to know what is going on, and the Prime Minister must tell us whether he is engaged with the Rajapaksa regime behind the scenes, either he or Mr Morrison or both, talking to the Rajapaksa government about these arrangements. and they should indicate to Australians whether they have been told or know whether a Sri Lankan boat has left Sri Lanka to come and intercept an Australian vessel.
Given that the government's saying it just does not comment on on-water operations, how likely is it that the Australian public will know anything? We know that a spokesman for the Sri Lankan military has this morning told the ABC that they haven't intercepted a boat, they've got no plans to do so. As far as they're aware, Australia is taking the boat to Christmas Island. Are we ever going to know?
What does it come to when the Australian people can be denied the truth of what is going on? Tony Abbott talked about transparency, about grown-up government, and he's now hiding the truth from the community. And what is most awful about this is it involves the lives of 153 people, 37 of whom are children. Australians want to know what is happening to these people, and we want to know just how complicit our government has been with the Rajapaksa regime in stitching up this arrangement. If it's true that they're being transferred in the middle of the ocean in the midst of monsoon weather, we need to know that they're prepared to do that to people. But most important, the fundamental question is, Mr. Abbott, are you going to return the persecuted to the persecutors? Australians need to know just what sort of person you are.
Just on the death of an Australian soldier in Afghanistan this morning, obviously non-combat, but any death is tragic.
I think everyone's heart goes out to the families and the friends of our soldiers when they die overseas. Obviously, I don't know and can't comment on the specific circumstances except to say that the Greens send our support and love to the families concerned, but to also say we support our men and women serving overseas and support the resources they need to support them to be as safe as they can and to be as healthy as they can. Thank you.